Hey everyone, Eric here. I've been seeing the topic of string gauge come up here on YouTube frequently from channels like Rhett Shull's to RJ Ronquillo's and most notably Rick Beato's, where he and a few other people compare the sound differences in 8 gauge strings all the way up to 11 gauge strings. And those videos are great, and I'm going to link them below because they inspired this one. But the one thing they had in common is that they're all using guitars tuned to standard tuning, which is great. But what happens when you tune a guitar to C standard? So that's what we're going to be doing in this video, is tuning a guitar to C standard and using 4 different gauges of strings from 9s to 12s. And my hope is to convey the differences in sound to you, the viewer, first of all, difference in sound, and then also I want to sort of explain the difference in feel, because feel is super personal preference. Furthermore, I want to know if something like a set of 9 gauge strings actually works on a guitar tuned to C standard. We're going to use 9s, play, then we're going to string it up with 10s, play the same thing, and so on, all the way up to 12s. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to put all those clips back to back, and then we can hear the differences, and hopefully this will help you understand whether or not you're using the right string gauge for your guitar. And speaking of that, let me know in the comments below what string gauges you like to use and in what tunings and on what guitars, because all of these things make for different recipes, so each guitar is going to favor a different string gauge, and then each person is going to like a different string gauge. So let me know what you use in the comments below. For these comparisons, we're going to use my Revolta Mondata, which is a 25-inch scale guitar with 2 humbuckers. I'm going to tune it to C standard for each different set of strings. We're going to run it into my Rocket Retro RR100, which is a hand-built replica of a Marshall Super Lead. That is going to run into the aux for attenuation and low down, and then we're going to run out of the aux into my interface, and that's how we're going to get the sound into the computer. So first up, we're going to string the guitar up with 9 gauge strings. Like I said before, I'm pretty curious to see how the strings feel because they're pretty light strings, and we're tuning to C standard, which is 2 full steps down from E standard. So let's get the 9s on the guitar and plug it in and see how it sounds. Okay, so that was the 9s, and they were pretty flimsy, but honestly, I'm really surprised that they actually worked. They held tune. I did notice that with my fretting hand, I could get the notes to bend out of tune because there was so little tension on the string. But if you have a light fretting hand, or if you pick light, if you just like to play lighter on your guitar, the 9s might work perfectly for you in C standard. So now let's go ahead and put the 10 gauge strings on the Mondata, tune it to C standard, and see if it sounds different, and let me convey how it feels different. So we just finished up the 10 set of strings on the Mondata, and to my fingers, I noticed a little bit more stability in the strings. There's more string tension, which makes it a little bit easier to play for me because I could dig in just a tiny bit more. So in my mind, I've been thinking about how string gauge kind of relates to picking technique as like amplifiers relate to headroom. You know, the lighter gauge string is sort of like an amp with lower headroom. You can't dig in as much before you get the string, like, you know, it's vibrating at its max. So you can only push so hard before you just start going out of tune, or you bend the string out of tune. And the higher you go up in gauge, the more you can dig in and really start hammering on those notes without getting that fluctuation in pitch, meaning without the string has enough resistance to your picking to where it settles in, it's not going to go out of tune, and it's easier for you to play. So like I said before, if you have a light touch, tens would probably work pretty well for you. For me, so I've learned to sort of adapt my picking technique to those sets of strings, but I prefer the tens over the nines myself because I can dig in a little more, and you can still bend really easily. You just don't have, you have more leeway in how hard you can pick the strings. So we're gonna put the 11s on, play the same thing, and I will see you after. So right off the bat, I'm really digging the 11s because they provide more tension, and I can dig in a little bit more for my playing, and I can really hit the strings without it having that wobbly effect, even in C standard. Also, I can definitely start to hear a change in sound from the 10s to the 11s. The 11s felt like they had more bass in them. I would say, I don't think it's any muddier. I think the bass content is just increasing, so it sounds a little bit more full. Be that good or bad, but I can definitely start to hear the sound shift in the 11 gauge strings, and I'm curious to hear how the 12 gauge strings is going to sound even compared to the 11s. So let's go ahead, get the guitar strung up with 12s, and then I'll see you back here. So to my ears and fingers, the 12 gauge strings didn't seem like that big of a jump compared to going from 10s to 11s. That's the one that I thought was the most significant. The 12 gauge strings sounded maybe a bit fuller in the low end, but more importantly, it felt a lot stiffer. In terms of headroom, you're really going to have to like hammer on the strings to get them to come out of tune. You can play really heavy on those 12s, and also it's a little bit harder to bend strings. So if you're someone who plays a lot of rhythm guitar and not a whole bunch of like bendy leads, then the 12 gauge strings might be perfect for you because they're pretty solid when it comes to tuning, and you can play really hard and it's not going to go out of tune. So now we're going to take all the clips, play them back to back so you can hear if there are any differences in sound quality and, you know, see which one you like best. I'm really curious to know which string gauge you preferred the sound of in that comparison. And also, again, this is all really personal preference. To my ears, I didn't hear a whole bunch of difference in sound when I was playing them, and it was more about the feel. And to me, those 11 gauge strings really walk that balance of tuning stability, but also letting me bend enough to where if I wanted to play a lead, I could. The 10s, they felt a little slinky. The 9s, they could work, but you'd have to have a pretty light touch on them. And then on the other side, the 12s worked pretty well, but to me, they just felt a little too stiff to be comfortable. Maybe if you're playing in like B standard instead of C standard, like in this video, they work a little bit better. And also, again, let me know in the comments below which string gauges you use, what your guitar is that you use them on, and what tuning you play in. Because all of these things make the whole image, not just one part, you know? So the scale length has a direct relation on how the guitar strings feel, and then the string gauge also has a relation. So again, let me know in the comments below your setup, and also why don't you throw in the type of music you play? Because, you know, a lot of people play in down tunings that play like heavier music, but also we have people like the Landreth brothers playing in like open C, and they don't play heavy music, they play like really melodic stuff. So let me know in the comments below what type of music you played, which one you preferred the sound of, which set of strings you preferred the sound of, and the strings that you use, the tuning that you use, and what guitar you use. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and check out all the other gear demos and instructional videos that I have here. And if you think you have a friend who might like this video, please share it with them. Also, you can keep up with me on a daily basis over on Instagram if you follow me at Eric Merrow. Again, I really love interacting with everyone in the comments here and over on Instagram. So get a hold of me if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.